this was a seismic report, very well put together. But of course, it should never have had to happen. And the government at the time were drag kicking and screaming to actually set up this inquiry. And as recently as a few months ago, the government were resisting attempts to move onto the compensation issue around this. So, I mean, I heard the apology yesterday. I suppose people in Derry will be well used to hearing British Prime Ministers apologising for stuff, but it's what comes next, because this has been absolutely devastating for thousands upon thousands of families. And, you know, your listeners heard what Christina had to say. I've listened to victims before. It is just devastating what has happened to them, and it was allowed to happen to them, and it was done to them by successive British governments and agencies of governments and the NHS. And this was clearly a cover-up that went on for decade after decade after decade. And of course, compensation needs to be paid out as quickly as possible. It could have been done before now, but I just don't think there's anything that can compensate for the devastation that has been put upon families right across our society. And absolutely, the next phase needs to be prosecution of people who were involved. But even more importantly, I think lessons have to be learned, and this can never, ever be allowed to happen again.
Were you actually present for the apology yesterday? And what did you make of it as a whole? Because some people out there this morning might be wondering how much difference a public apology actually makes.
Well, my flight was delayed, so I didn't get in for the apology. But look, I think, of course, it's important that the government apologise. But in the grand scale of this, and that people really need to understand how huge this has been and how devastating this has been for many, many people, I think those words will be important, yes, but will be fairly insignificant given what they have been through, and given, I suppose, what, you know, successive governments have done to them and not done for them. This was only ever, the inquiry was brought about because of the hard work of many, many victims. But also, you know, the government was dragged kicking and screaming there because of backbenchers. There had to be backbench MPs that brought this to the attention of the government and actually forced them to act. I mean, I just think that is pretty despicable. And there are some people like, you know, Ken Clark, who come out of this very, very badly, who are sitting in the very privileged position of the House of Lords still today. You know, and I just think that is pretty despicable.
Of course, the NHS was heavily criticised yesterday in the report as well, and a recommendation was made that a duty of candour be introduced, echoing similar calls, of course, that we all know here in this part of the world made in 2018 for the Hyphen and Toomey inquiry. Yeah,
I mean, of course, because what we have seen in this scandal and many other scandals is that the system tends to not think immediately that they need to tell the truth. They tend to immediately gather around and try to protect the system, and that's why they've had decades-long campaigns on this issue and many other issues to actually get to the truth. The immediate reflex is to cover up the truth. That seems to be a systematic problem and failure within the state, and that needs to be shifted immediately. Of course, the job of the NHS or any other public body or any government institution is to be there on behalf of the public, particularly the most vulnerable in society. It is not there to protect the state or the system or the process that they're involved in. And that, I think, would be the most immense change that could come out of this inquiry. But, you know, I'll not hold my breath.